quick
Yeah.
question for you. So, especially with your experience with sleep paralysis, that sounds pretty terrible right there.
Yeah.
But in your studies of it, is there different levels of it? Because I had always thought it that, and maybe you need to give us a real good definition of it, because I think a lot of people out there probably don't fully understand. I personally had just thought it was something where you couldn't get out of bed, almost like this feeling of like, I can't even lift my arms, is how I've had it described to me. But you're talking about voices speaking to you. I mean, that's demonic oppression. That's a whole different level right there.
Yeah.
Totally different level. So I'm going to kind of tackle a few of your questions at once, and hopefully I won't babble too badly here, but just a generic definition of sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Technically what we're talking about, and technically what I'm talking about in my book, would more specifically be a sleep paralysis attack or a sleep paralysis episode, because there's really nothing unusual in and of itself being in various paralytic states during our sleep. God designed us to go numb at certain sleep states, in deep sleep, in deep theta states, and in REM, as a way of protecting us. Because if we're not sort of anchored to our bed, we will act out dreams, we will sleepwalk, we will wet the bed, we will potentially kick and thrash, or we could run into a wall, we could fall downstairs, we could sleepwalk into traffic. And so there's nothing in and of itself demonic or spiritual about waking up too soon and not being able to move. And I've had many experiences, as may you have too, where you wake up and you're kind of in that groggy sort of anesthesia sort of feeling where you can't quite move, but it feels almost kind of good. You're like, it's a deep state of relaxation. And what we're talking about is when demonic entities capitalize on that particular time. They capitalize on our physiology. They increase the terror of the scenario because they know we can't move and we're not necessarily fully awake, and we can't scream or wake somebody up to come and help us. And so that sleep paralysis is a physiological state of not being able to move. But a sleep paralysis attack is when something is now occurring simultaneously with that paralysis. And there are, as John said, varying levels of this. Some people, there's nothing scary about it at all. They don't ever sense anything spiritual. They just kind of shake themselves awake, and it's all said and done. And we get into this a little bit later, and this is all outlined in the book. There is an intruder phase, there is an incubus phase, and then there's a vestibular motor phase. And that's super unnecessarily fancy speak for the intruder phase is kind of the basic level where people wake up, they recognize that they can't move, they're frightened, they sense some sort of presence in the room with them. They definitely sense that something is, the spiritual weight and atmosphere of the room is different. And it's usually accompanied by levels of terror that go beyond a nightmare. The incubus phase is then where it's taken a little bit further and there's more of an attack. There is an actual entity in the room. They're holding you down. People can often visualize this thing and they see different things. Usually when you say incubus, people think specifically of the incubus and the succubus, which are specific to demons that assault people physically and sexually. But the incubus phase of sleep paralysis, it can be any sort of attack. It can be, I feel like I'm being choked. I feel like I'm being pulled off my bed. Things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to culminate in a full-out sexual attack, but of course they can.
Yeah.
And then the vestibular motor phase is an actual out-of-body to astral projection experience, where now we're into the realms of like UFO abduction stories. It's an actual abduction scenario. You're being pulled out of your body. Many times people will look down, they'll see themselves on the bed, they know they're being separated. People will talk about seeing their silver cord attaching them. And this is where a lot of Christians get nervous, because this is all new age, and this is astral projection, and this is spirit guides and ascended masters and the high places of Ephesians 6:12. But so I just want to make it clear to the listeners that This is an abduction scenario. And when Christians or even non-Christians experience this, it's not always because they're asking for it or they've been studying and researching it and they want to go up into the astral. There's a lot of people out there that want to astral project, but there's more people out there that this is happening to that want nothing to do with it. It's a forced abduction into the astral realm. And that is kind of the third most aggressive state of sleep paralysis.